Everybody. Hello, can you hear us all right? Yeah, can't hear us. There we go, there we go. Little sound check on that thing. Cool, hi, I'm Toby Russell. This is George Arison. We're co-CEOs at Shift. We actually originally met in college, freshman year. Started our first business soon thereafter, and have been working together for about 20 years doing different businesses. But we want to share experiences from two of them. One of them was called Taxi Magic. Think Uber before Uber. So like I jokingly call it Netscape of the Uber space. We created the ability to push a button on a BlackBerry. We were building Java apps for BlackBerries in 2007 and connected with across about 40 cities, cab companies in all of those places. And now we're doing a company called Shift. Shift is an online marketplace for vehicles. So if you want to sell your car, you put it on Shift. You want to buy a car, you go to Shift, you get it. We make that whole thing happen. But we're not going to talk deep about those companies. We're going to talk about the lessons learned. And a couple of the really, really key things are going to be the 4 things we're going to share. Will those apply to startups and big companies? Quick pause. How many people here are working in a startup environment? Small company, raise your hand. Wow, cool, cool. How many people working like large company? Think like more than 200 people. All right, perfect. So we're going to try and apply those lessons to both of those groups. George is going to kick us off with what probably is the fundamental most important thing. Never, never compromise on talent.
Hi, everybody. It's weird a little bit because I feel like I'm not talking to a mic, but it actually seems like you're talking to a mic, so bear with us. So we've done 2 companies together, like Toby said, and at Taxi Magic, we actually didn't really focus on culture and people very much. And that was probably to a substantial detriment to us as a business, because there's a lot of things we could have done differently had we been more careful with hiring. Hiring, like I always joke, being a founder is like being a glorified recruiter, because it's all you do is hire people. And so hiring really awesome talent is really time consuming and super hard. And ultimately, you kind of have to make it happen, even if it's easier to hire people who are not awesome, because you need people right away. And that obviously is really challenging, because you're like, oh my God, if I get this person now, he'll do so much more. But if you wait for an awesome person, most likely that'll be a lot better, because hiring not great people and letting them go is super, super costly. We've been looking for a head of product for nearly a year. It's probably a little too long, but we've been really careful with who we want to hire. Hopefully it'll be done by the time we get back. But generally our approach has been, hey, always hire awesome people. I accidentally skipped to the number 2, which is about how do you use user-centric design for building a product.
So this one originates in the Taxi Magic experience. What we did was we thought, hey, we want to be a software company. And we're going to build essentially like Expedia for taxis in the US is where we started. So what we did was we created a really cool app, first on BlackBerry and then on iPhone, where you could push a button and we would connect your ride into the taxi dispatch system of a bunch of different companies. Now here was the problem. The existing taxis could also pick people up off of the street. And we're like, oh, okay. Periodically, we would insert a reservation, and then the taxi would pick up somebody off the street and not fulfill the reservation. Now, they would blame us, not the taxi company. They were like, hey, that was the Taxi Magic, the app's fault. And so the lesson there was, and that, by the way, it completely messes up the value proposition. Like, no taxi, no magic, you're just dead. And so what we began discovering was, what we needed to do was not build the thing that we thought the world needed, but really work on what a user's experience was going to be and build back from that. And then be able to really control that user experience end to end. That's actually what Uber ended up doing, was being able to say, hey, we're actually going to think about what someone really wants, not just access to a taxi, but reliable transportation, and build that thing end to end. They created the ability to actually control the whole system, as opposed to us, we plugged into somebody else's experience in someone else's ecosystem. We thought that would be a much faster way to go, but in fact, what I would really encourage as you're building your products, make sure that you're thinking deep in the user centricity and saying, hey, how much of that user experience can you control? Because the experience really, really does make the difference. Not just the economics, not just the functional, but ultimately that user emotional journey and need. Next part, raising money, really critical.
So we just raised our Series A about not even 2 months ago, like 7 weeks ago. We would have raised about $300 million for Shift so far. I calculated recently that every year for the last 6 years I've been fundraising. I'm really excited to not be fundraising next year, but most likely we'll have to anyway. It's kind of a permanent thing of being a startup founder. But generally speaking, if you go back to our pre-Series A deck, we would have thought that we needed about half the money that we actually ended up needing for the company to get to where it is today. And so my lesson from this experience and previous experience and every other founder I've ever talked to is you always under-project how much money you need. and always should raise way more money than you think you need. Because lifeblood of a startup is time, and time is not possible without money, because you die if you don't have cash. And so people will kind of over-focus on dilution and say, hey, like, if I raise too much money, I'm going to get diluted too much. But it's better to be diluted and exist versus to not be diluted and die. And so I always urge everyone to raise as much money as possible, and usually just make assumptions on what you need, but then double those and raise twice as much as you think you actually need. I'm going to go to number 4 in a second, but before we do that, we're going to probably have a couple minutes for questions, so people should start thinking about any questions that they might want to ask. Yeah. The 4th lesson is about test and learn, and Toby will talk about that.
Yeah, so how many people have read Eric Ries's The Lean Startup? A few people? Yeah. So really, really great book. If you're going to start a company, if you're going to develop products, if you're going to run an operation, definitely recommend that thing, because the core philosophy is one about learning by doing, not learning by planning. And so have worked in a bunch of different environments, both small, like tiny startup, 2 people, all the way to large, like corporate environment, think like 50,000 people. And over again, learn this lesson, and it's a really hard one. When you go out to create a product or a service or an experience, the temptation is to jump straight to, well, let's build it and launch it. And that seems like a very logical thing to do. You're like, hey, we want to offer this thing. Let's go, we'll put together a project plan, and we'll have all the teams that are needed to build out the thing, and then when we have the thing, we'll do a big launch and we'll put it out there. Candidly, that's kind of like the Apple style of product development. People think, oh, that's a good idea. I'll tell you, from a startup point of view, it absolutely is not. And so what you really want to be doing is saying, go end to end with one unit, rather than build out entire components that allow you to do the whole thing at scale. And what you discover is you're going to learn what it takes to do the thing you're trying to do empirically, in reality, rather than spending a bunch of time building something that may or may not be exactly what you need. Example, our team right now is about to launch a new city for Shift. And so I'm having this conversation. This comes up every day. I'm sure every one of you guys deal with this. We're about to launch a new city, and they're like, all right, it's going to take us 4 months to launch the city. And I'm like, whoa, 4 months to launch a city? Like, what are we talking about here? And they're like, yeah, we're going to have to put in place the marketing and this whole new product development. We're going to do all these changes. We've got to rework the pricing algorithm. They lay out this entire list of the things that need to happen. And I'm like, no. Next month, like in the 5 days, we will go buy our first car. Just operationally do it. Duct tape, baling wire, go do the thing. And then we will sell the thing. And it won't be scalable, and it will be massively messy, but we will learn what it takes to be in that place. And then we'll iteratively grow and add all that stuff based on what we're seeing we need. So what's the point? Don't go out and build a bunch of stuff you think, and then launch it and find out. Go actually do the thing, and then learn what you need along the way, and build those things as you go. Like, a massively different philosophy. Candidly, way harder to do, but far, far more valuable. So that's a big lesson learned for us on that thing. Can talk more about that, or we could jump over to questions if there are folks with questions.
Yeah.
Things on people's minds. Anything about hiring teams, raising money, building product. There you go, yeah. Thank you for being the first person. Okay, it's always hard to be the first person.
First question. All right, here you go.
Regarding this last point you raised, so my problem was when I was working in this way with our customer and various startups was that sometimes you simply, this disappointment of customers when something goes wrong, it causes lots of bad press or bad publicity in the internet. And how do you handle it if at the very beginning, the first customers give you, for example, some bad Google or Facebook reviews? They say, hey, this company is not professional, these are amateurs and stuff like that. How do you deal with that?
That's a really, really great question. So I'm going to try and restate the question. Question is, hey, you just said go launch a thing before it's fully ready. What happens when people have a bad experience? Are they going to give you a bad Yelp review, bad Google review? Is that going to hurt your brand? Is it going to make you look like a fool because you had to go out and have the thing be perfect? Did I get that right? And the answer is twofold. One, start very, very small. And 2, interact with those customers a lot because you're busy trying to learn. And 3rd, and this is going to sound a little bit silly, buy them off. Somebody has a bad experience, give them a $100 gift certificate to Amazon. They didn't have a bad experience. They just had a fantastic experience. You gave them $100 to Amazon. And you can afford to do that for 3 or 4 people. Doesn't matter. You can afford to do that for 10 people. You can't do that for 1,000. And this is why I reiterate this point. If you go out and launch, something's going to be wrong with whatever you launch. And if you launch at scale right away, you're going to have hundreds of people who have a bad experience, not 4. And trying to buy off hundreds of people with a gift card is a bad idea. 4 with a gift card, great. And people walk out being like, wow, I was part of the process. You guys learned, and you just be totally transparent. Yeah, we were learning. This is a pilot. We're figuring this thing out. Here's a gift card. Thank you so much for your help on that. Now, obviously, it's a little bit hard in certain areas. Like if you're doing neurosurgery, not so much. But if you're selling cars or launching apps or you're trying to do something around like internet connectivity, like it's totally workable in most consumer tech and in most B2B spaces. Literally just buy them off.
When we launched Shift, we actually had a different brand. We used a brand called CarFoxy, which is not obviously a company today. And we would list cars on Craigslist to get feedback from consumers. And we'd also reach out to customers on Craigslist and say, hey, if we offered you this product, how would you interact with it? Now, there was not even a real product at that point. It was just a website with a brand and nothing really there. Probably, yes, some customers were upset. But we learned things about our business that we would never have learned otherwise, because you need to do it in order to kind of understand it. And amazingly, 2 people we interacted with actually invested in the company in our seed round. So I would always joke that the best place to look for investors is on Craigslist. And we actually redesigned our product through user feedback, because customers would be like, oh, the stuff you guys are offering with like financing and warranty is interesting, but why don't you just take my car away and sell it for me? And that's the business we kind of got into. So I don't know, I became a very big believer in testing and learning.
Totally.
Any other questions?
Probably have time for one more.
Yeah,
and then
one more question, anyone? Oh, here we go.
Hi, I have a question. Do you define kind of KPIs?
Closer.
Do you define kind of KPIs for these new features when they are really big to track, like, is it really successful? What is the success metrics?
Success metrics for what?
KPI.
Oh, KPIs, got it. Okay, sorry. I thought he said, do you have APIs for launching things? And I was like, you could, but I'm not sure if that's what we're talking about. KPIs, yes. So actually we do that. That is really important, to be able to define, hey, what does success look like and what does it not look like? That's particularly important if you're saying, hey, I know what I want this product to do, and therefore I'm going to measure 2 or 3 things. And I really recommend against having like 20 KPIs. Pick like 3 things that matter and go after that. But one of the big things that we found out is what you're learning, oftentimes, particularly with really early stage development, is not KPI based, i.e., will this perform in a certain way? It's more, does this resonate with users? If not, am I getting feedback that says, I don't want that? What George just said earlier, at Shift, we launched with a value proposition, and people were like, hey, I love all this, but what I really want is that. They literally would just tell you. It's not like a KPI-based thing. They're like, I think it's nice you're doing this, but what I really need is this other thing. And that's what we talk about, like going user need, like working back from the user need. You identify what people are telling you they really need, and by and large, you talk to 8 or 10 people, you start hearing the same thing, you're onto something. Like, there are niche markets where that's not going to happen, but if you're doing mass market work, 8 or 10 people tell you the same thing, you're like, all right, probably there's a there. Then you launch a larger pilot, and you have a KPI called, does this resonate at scale? Okay, we gotta close up, but thank you all. This was great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, guys. Big round of applause.